Good morning, students. Welcome to TalentBlazer, India's latest platform for all your UGC NET related issues and problems. And here I welcome you, your friend and teacher, in this journey. And I will be talking about UGC NET Paper 2 Commerce. That the subject code for the same is 08. Alright, so we will be covering the commerce subject 08. And in this video, we'll start with the unit 1, that is business environment and international business in your syllabus. So we'll start with what is business environment initially. All right. So business environment encompasses all those factors that affects a company operation and includes customers, competitors, stakeholders, suppliers, industry trends, regulation, other government activities, social and economic factors, and technological development. So basically, from this definition, what do we realize? That there are so many factors involved in a business environment. You guys must be wondering, even we human beings operate and live in an environment. Basically, even business do that. No business do their operations in an isolation. They have to work in an environment. They take the resources from an environment and they have to give it back to the environment as well, because the customers, the suppliers, everyone is a part of the environment that business operates in. So this is the basic definition, and every business has to operate in the environment. As I said, it's highly unlikely that they have to operate in isolation. All right. So business environment encompasses all these factors that have been mentioned below, like stakeholders, suppliers, industry trends, competitor, customers, regulation, other government activities, social and economic factors, and technological development. All right. So this is just a definition about the business environment. I hope and I hope I have made myself clear with this, the definition of business environment. Next up, we'll talk about the nature of business environment. It is very crucial to know what is the nature of business environment. As you may have realized by now that there are many factors, many stakeholders involved in a business. So the nature of the business environment includes the following. The first one being complex. Business environment is compound in nature. Environment consists of a number of factors, events, conditions, and influences arising from different sources which impact business, thus making the business complex. So, because there are so many factors involved, you must realize that it is going to be complex. It's not going to be straightforward. There is not only one person involved in a business. There are so many employees involved. There are so many policies. There are so many regulations that a business have to follow. There is social responsibility, the economic policies, and the legal policy as well. So the business environment is bound to be complex. There are so many factors involved. The first thing that you have to keep in mind, that the nature of the business environment is complex. Next up, it's going to be dynamic. Business environment has to be dynamic because it is a constantly changing process. The business that people used to do a decade ago is not the same now. There have been so many changes. Many businesses have been switched from offline stores to online stores, given due to pandemic or due to any other reasons, because people see a future, a potential in there, right? So business environment constantly keeps on changes, so it is dynamic. You cannot say that business environment is static, it's dynamic, and it does keeps on evolving, right? So it is the nature of the business environment that it keeps on changing, and it is quite dynamic, right? So I'll just read it out for you guys. Business environment is dynamic as it keeps on changing in terms of technological improvement, shift in consumer preferences, or entry of new competition in the market. So initially, let's say there were only few businesses involved in a particular category, but now, due to many more industries coming up, it is a dynamic competition now. All right. So next up, we talked about the nature, that is business environment is dynamic. We have covered the complex part, we have covered the dynamic part. The third part is uncertainty. Business environment is largely uncertain, as it is very difficult to predict future happenings, especially when environment changes are taking too frequently, as in the case of in information technology or fashion industry. So you must be realizing that something is in fashion today won't be in the fashion in tomorrow because the time is changing quickly. People are adapting new clothes, and then moving on because of the trends, latest trend. People are moving with the trends, right? So business environment is quite uncertain. You might be realizing, okay, we are doing very good. We have a classic example of Nokia. When they thought they had the mobile industry within their hands, what happened? When Apple divides a new smartphone, they just came in. They provided the better product than Nokia, and even though Nokia was a better brand, bigger brand, they failed. And Apple survived, and Apple is now the one of the biggest smartphone making company in the world. And that is why, you have to make sure that you move with the time, because time is constantly changing and it is quite uncertain, as within this example, that Nokia didn't adapt to the latest smartphones, and with their outdated OS, it was made sure that they won't be able to compete with the competitors like iPhone and Samsung. So this is the uncertainty part I have made clear with this example as well. There is this diagram telling you all those niches, that it is dynamics, complex, uncertain, and modified, and uh, re- uh, returns, everything. It is mentioned in the business environment part, right? So these are the nature of the business environment. Next up, we'll talk about the elements of business environment. So the business environment factors may be classified into two different types. There are broadly two types of environment that affects the organization. One is internal and other is external environment. So basically, we're talking that there are two kind of environment that affect a business. One is internal environment and other is external environment. So what will internal environment include? Internal environment, as it says, internal includes internal factor of the business. It includes plans, policy, human resource, financial resource, corporate image, etc. So the main thing that you have to keep a note of, the components of internal environment are controllable, right? So do pay attention to this, that the components of internal environment are controllable, and the components are as follows: plans and policy of the business, human resource management, financial resource, corporate image, etc. Because these are within the hands of the organization. These are the factors which which the organization, which the business can easily handle, right? So this is about the internal environment. Next up, we'll talk about the external environment. The environment which lies outside the organization is known as external environment. External factors are unpredictable and uncontrollable. They are beyond the control of the company. So, as the term state, external, right? They are not within the boundaries of company. They are outside of it, right? So, they are difficult to predict and surely uncontrollable, because those things are not in your hand. How are you going to control it then, right? So the question arises whether they are predictable and controllable. No, external factors are unpredictable and uncontrollable, so they are beyond the control of the company. Now, external environment is further classified, right? So external environment is further classified as: first, micro environment, the smaller part; second, the macro environment. All right, so the external environment is further classified into two. One is micro environment, second is macro environment. Micro environment is also known as operating environment. That's the question right there for you. Which environment is known as operating environment? You surely know it now. That is micro environment. All right. So it consists of company's immediate environment, that if that affects its performance. It includes customers, suppliers, intermediaries, competitors, etc. The microenvironment consists the element that directly affects a company. Okay, so by now you should be clear with what is microenvironment and what is it is also called as. It is also called as operating environment. Why? Because these are those things which immediately affect the company performance. The These factors are not tough to guess, because what are the factors that affect the business immediately? Customers, your customers whom you are supplying your product, your supplier, the supply chain management, right? Next up, the intermediaries. You are not selling the product directly to the consumer. There are intermediaries involved. So You need to consult with them as well. You need to have a good relationship with them. You need to keep a check on your competitors as well. What are they supplying in the market? At what price? And what are their offerings? So competitors are a part of micro environment. All these forms a part of micro environment. I hope I have made myself very clear with this, that micro environment is also known as operating environment, and it includes the nearest that affects the company performance directly, such as customers, right? If your customers are preferring some other brands, it will affect your business. The suppliers are not happy with you. They want to switch to some other company. So you have to maintain a good relationship with your suppliers as well. And then the competitors, as I told you about competitors, you need to keep a check on your competitors. What are their offerings? What is the price? You need to keep a check, right? So that forms a part of micro environment. And to make sure that you do remember, I have put some graphics, some images, right? It will be easier for you guys to remember then. The customers, competitors, basically CCSSI, to make sure that you do remember CC with customer, competitors, supplier, society, SS, and then I, intermediaries. So these are all the forms of micro environment. These all factors form the micro environment. Next, I will talk about the macro environment. So, according to Philip Kotler, one of the greatest management thinkers, macro environment create force that creates opportunities and pose threats to business units. So, let's say you're working in an environment. All right, I've been saying no business can operate in isolation. They have to work in an environment. The government brings up a rule. The government brings up a rule that makes your business more favorable. Your business don't have to pay any taxes. Let's suppose your business was paying 18% of taxes. Now the government has made sure that your industry, your business comes under the exemption list. Now you have to pay 0% of tax. That will create an opportunity. On the other hand, let's suppose your company has to pay zero tax, but now the government has imposed a new ruling that you have to pay 18% of tax. That will pose a threat. That will come under the political macro factor. These are all the macro factors that you should be aware about: the demographic part, economic, technological, cultural, political, natural, legal. So we'll cover few of them. Demographic environment relates to the human population with reference to its size, education, sex ratio, age, occupation, income, status, etc. Business deal with people, so they have to study in detail the various components of demographic environment. All right, so demographic environment differs from country to country. I can just give you an example of how you have to relate. The demographic environment of India will be young, and it is young. The majority of our population comes in a working population, right? Working age category. But compared to Japan, there most of the population is in old age category, right? So the business that have to, let's say, sell the product, they have to know what will their product will appease to the customers or to the public of that particular country. All right, so they have to take care. Next up is the economic part. They have to know about the economic policies. What are the economic policies? I'll give you an example: the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy relates to the taxation part. Anything that relates to your taxation part is related to the fiscal policy. Next up is the monetary policy. The monetary policy that is been regulated by the RBI. So the monetary policy will be regulated by the RBI. You need to know, okay, what is the current inflation rate, what is the cash reserve ratio, and what are the lending rate, interest rate. Everything will be determined through the economic part. Next up is the technological part. So let's say you are in a third world country. The technological part will surely be different from compared to someone in the first world country, because those country have the residents who are the product innovator. The most innovation comes from the first world countries, and the technological part in the third world countries is comparatively less, and you can say comparatively behind than those of the first world countries. Then the cultural part. So I'll tell you the cultural part with an example. The McDonald's, a chain, a chain, a franchisee, they offer different kind of products. The vegetarian menu is not available globally, but for India to cater their needs, because the most of the market eats vegetarian burgers, they need to make sure they the burgers that they are selling appeals to the cultural reference, and they cannot provide some substances of meat, some kind of meat that is being prohibited in our country. All right, so that's basically the cultural part. I have explained you with an example so that you can remember it easily. Next up is the political part. So you need to know, okay, the policies. What are the policies that the government is allowing FDI, the investments, and uh, how the government reciprocates, right? So is it a capitalism? It is a socialism. So you need to know what are the patterns and how many times does the election happen. Does state elections and central elections happen differently, or they are unified? So you get to know, and which party has which ideology, and which ideology is being followed by the country and the nation. You need to know about all of those things, right? And in economic part, you need to know about the economic system as well. All right. So you need to know about whether they follow free market, right? The market based system, or the government based system, right? uh, the socialism part. And the third one is the mixed space, that our mixed space economy that India follows. So they should be knowing that some crucial sectors is being held by the government, and the rest is being decided by the market sectors, right? So you need to know, okay, which economic system does this particular country follows, right? Right. So then we have the legal part. The legal part just tells you about which act and the obligation that a company has to follow. Everything uh, comes under the legal part. All right. The corporate social responsibility come under this legal part. Earlier it wasn't mandatory in the most of the cases, but now it is mandatory in the most of the cases, depending upon your turnover and your sales and revenue. So CSR has been made compulsory, right? So these are all the macro factors. And in the next class, we'll start with international business. So, and the motive, the motive of all this video is to make the learning in fun and interactive. So I hope you like this video. Please do the sub for the channel and like the video and share the video as much as possible, because these video will help you in your UGC NET preparation, paper 2 commerce. And please do join for the part 2 as well. In that video I'll cover international business extensively. So join for the next video. Thank you.